Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix24 webinar, Better Business Processes. Thank you for joining today. Okay, so first of all, we'll just have our introduction. So who are we? We are Bitrix24 Gold Partners Interface, and my name is Sam Connor, Sales Engineer here at Interface. We're based in the UK, in the US, and in Hong Kong, and we offer a full range of services to really help you get the most out of Bitrix24. Starting off with pre-sale support, so we can discuss your requirements in detail and see if Bitrix24 would be a good fit for your business. We can then implement the software for you and implement any specific requirements that you have for the system, so we can configure it to your specific requirements. We can then, for a self-hosted system, if you require hosting services, we can host the system for you and manage the server. And we offer ongoing dedicated support and training to really help you get the most out of Bitrix24. So if you're new to Bitrix24, you've come to the Better Business Processes webinar today to get more information. Bitrix24 is a collaboration suite of in excess of 35 tools that all help you to manage your business. And today what we'll be looking at are specifically how we can manage our processes using the tools within Bitrix24. And there are a variety of tools we can use. There are over 9 million customers that use Bitrix24 around the world, and the system is available in two different editions. We have the Cloud Edition and the Self-Hosted Edition. For a cloud system, prices start from $49 per month, and for a self-hosted system, for the 50-user edition, prices start here at $2,990. Okay, so today's webinar is Better Business Processes. So first of all, it's really important to understand exactly what a business process is. So the business process modules within Bitrix24 allows organizations to execute and to monitor workflows on different objects within the system, such as on documents. It could be within the CRM system, within leads and deals. It can be tasks and HR items, such as leave requests and expenses. And we'll have a look at some of these examples later on in the webinar. And Bitrix24, it does include a very advanced editor tool with simple action blocks from which processes can be constructed. So you can create your own processes. And there are three different types of processes that exist in Bitrix24. So first of all, we have a sequential business process. And this is where a process is performed with a series of consecutive actions on an item from a predefined start point to a predefined end point. And let's just have a look at a sequential process just while we're talking about sequential processes. Okay, so this is what a sequential business process would look like. So we've said here how you have a start point at the top and you then have an end point. And in between those 2 points, you then have different action blocks that you add into the process for managing your processes. So we can see here on this particular business process on the sequential process designer, we've got some emails that are being sent out. We're then pausing for a period of time and then following up with some more emails. And we've also got a condition in here as well. So you can use the different action blocks here on the right-hand side to build out your different processes. So we'll look later on at the annual leave process. This uses the sequential business process where we go from a start point all the way through to an end point. The next type of process is a state-driven process. And a state-driven business process does not have a start and end points, just like we've seen on the sequential. It does not have those start and end points. What it does have is a series of statuses. And at each status, there are triggers of child processes from that status. So let's just have a look at a state-driven process here. So you can see it looks completely different we do not have a start and an endpoint. We have different statuses. So we can see here, this is on a document. So this is a very common process, what you would run on a document. So you can have different statuses here. And then based on those statuses, we're then running different actions. So when the status of the document is at draft, we're sending for approval, and then it will be published. So you can configure the types of actions that are enabled on a state-driven process. And the third type is automation. So this is available in both the CRM system and in the Robotic Process Automation Tool. And with the automation, what you can do is you can set up automatic actions based on the stage of your process. So in the CRM system, in leads and in deals, you can create different stages here across the top where you can progress your lead, for example. So this is in the lead section. And based on the stage, we can then run automatic actions. So for example, here, as soon as the lead comes in, we're sending out an automatic email to the lead that has inquired. So we can see this here, it's templated. We've got dynamic text to personalize the content. We could also here, we're going to create some tasks for the responsible person at a certain stage. So you can automatically create actions based on the stages in the system. Okay, so that's a look at the different types of business processes. Now we need to look at actually how these processes can be managed in the system. So where can they be run from? So let's have a look at how we can trigger these different types of workflows. So for running business processes, these can be run in lots of different areas of the system. So first of all, in the HR and in the general feed section, we can run lots of HR processes such as leave requests and expenses. In the CRM module, on most entities in the CRM, such as leads, deals, contacts, and companies, we can run business processes. On documents, you can automatically or manually trigger a process such as maybe an approval on a document. We also have lists, and lists are common within projects where you can store tables of data and information. We can run processes inside a list. In tasks, we can run automation rules. So based on the stages of tasks, you can run a process. Just one there that is only available on the professional cloud license or any self-hosted edition. And we can also run them on orders within the eStore format. So let's just go into our Bitrix24 system and have a look at those in some more detail. Okay, so let's go into the HR area. So let's go into the feed. And first of all, let's see how we can run a leave approval process inside here. So what we can do is we can click on the More button. And we can see the workflow section there. So based on there, we can then open up the different types of workflows we can run from the home feed section here. So for example, it could be a leave approval. So I can click on there and it will open up the leave approval form that I now need to input. And that can then start to be processed and sent off to my manager. And we'll have a look at this leave approval in more detail shortly. We'll go through a full example. So that's where we can generate workflows directly from the feed page in the system. If we go into the CRM, we've mentioned how you can run processes based on automation rules, and that can be done in leads and deals. But you can also manually trigger processes in any entity of the CRM system. So if we go into a company, in the top right-hand corner, we have our workflow section. So what we can do from here is I could manually trigger any process from the platform here. Okay, and then from there we can go into the Drive module. Okay, so within here you can see the different types of documents that we've got stored in here. So what we can do on documents is we can run business processes. So maybe, for example, I want to set up a two-stage approval for this document before any other users can access it. So I could send this for a 2-level approval to those particular users in the system. And just to mention, in terms of in the drive here, to make sure your processes are enabled, you need to go into the settings and configure business processes. And just make sure here you've turned on the Activate Business Processes button. Okay, so that's a look there at running your process in a document. You can also run processes on your projects as well. So we'll go into a project, and there's different areas in projects you can run your automations. So if you, as I've mentioned, if you've got the level of authority on your cloud license, you can run automations through the different stages in your tasks. Inside lists, for example, we have an expenses list. This is like a table of information. So inside here, we can see all of our expenses that are associated to a project. And I could run a business process from here for the approval of that expense. So that will go to the project manager to either approve or reject. You can see right now that status of this expense is in the pending section. Okay, and one other area as well, quite a new feature, is actually running robotic process automation. So that has its own module within Bitrix24. And this allows you to create your very own processes using some of the similarities to the CRM, where you can create different stages and run automations. So for example, here we've got a business trip robotic process automation. And what we do here is we progress that particular business trip expense request through different stages, and we can set up automation rules at each step of those processes here. So for example, as soon as it goes to the approval by supervisor stage, this supervisor is going to be notified, and once they've approved it, it automatically goes back to the requester to add some additional information. So you can set up your own stages for the workflow, you can create your own automation rules. So it's a nice, simple way to actually start to build and develop your business processes in the system. Okay, so next we're going to have a look at how we can actually create our very own business processes using the Business Process Designer tool. If you do have any questions as we're going through the Better Business Processes webinar today, please do add them into the chat box and we can go through those at different intervals in the webinar today. Okay, so now to look at actually how we can create our very own business processes. So within Bitrix24, there is a very advanced visual editor tool, which we've had a quick look at already, actually, when we looked at sequential business processes. And this editor tool can be used for building your very own custom business processes. So it uses very simple drag and drop technology, and it includes over 40 pre-built action blocks that you can use to develop and to customize your particular business process. So what we're going to have a look at now is actually creating our very own sequential business process. So if you remember from when we looked at the different types, this is where a process has a start point and an end point, and we then go through specific actions as the process is performed. And we're going to look at this based on the CRM system. So what we want to do if we want to create a new sequential business process in the CRM is we need to go into our CRM module. Okay, and within here we can go into the settings. And we want to go to the button here that says automation, which now opens up the business processes button. And then first of all, we can select which area of the CRM we want to actually route this business process to. So you can have this created on any entity in the CRM. The sequential process we're going to create is going to look at the different stages in the deal And based on those stages, we're then going to run specific actions when that stage has been hit. So we're going to actually create this inside the deal section. So when you create a sequential process, this will open up the form where you need to give this particular process a title. So we're going to be looking at when the deal stage changes. So let's call this deal stage change process. You can also give it a description, and we can then choose here when this process is run. So we could do it when the deal is added, or we could do it when there's any change in the deal, or you could just have it deselected and just show manually. So you would only ever manually trigger this process, like when we saw in the Techco company, we went into the top right-hand corner and we could manually trigger that workflow. But what we want this to do is to look at the stages of the deal. So when anything's changed, we want this to be run. Okay, so let's save that. And this then opens up the Business Process Designer tool. So on the right-hand side, we can see all of the different action blocks we can add into this process. And you can see here the start and the endpoint. So we now need to start populating this process. So first of all, I want to add a condition into here because I want this process to be looking at the different stages inside the deal. So here I'm going to select the condition action block. And we're going to look at 3 different stages in this deal. So I'm going to add one other complex branch into here. Okay, and from there, what we can now do is start populating this. So first of all, what we're going to do is choose the different stages we want this process to be looking at. So I can click on the cogwheel there, and it will open up the action parameters. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give this a title. So the first stage we're going to be looking at is the quote is sent stage. So let's say this is called quote sent. I'm going to be looking at a field. So now we need to be checking here where that stage is on the deal. So I'm going to select stage, and I'm going to say equals to, and we're going to look in the UK pipeline. And this is the stage we want to be looking at. So these are the different stages in this particular pipeline. So your deal will progress through these different stages, and we want to look at the quote sent stage. So I'm just going to do this now for each of the 3 different stages we want to look at. So you can see how simple it is to actually start building out your very own processes using the Business Process Editor tool. And if you do have any questions, please do add them into the chat box and we'll run through those after we have created this particular process. Okay, and the last stage is when actually the deal is won. Okay, so we've set up our different actions there. So within this process, in that pipeline, it's going to be looking for if the deal is at the sent stage, the approved stage, or the won stage. And then based on those different actions there, we then want to create different processes. So for example, let's say when the quote has been sent, we may want some specific actions to take place. So let's all just pause for 7 days. So once it's been sent, we want to give the customer some time. And then actually what we may want to do is actually go back to them and maybe we want to automatically set up a phone call just to check where we're at with that quote in the system. At the approved stage, so the quote's been approved, we probably want to run some type of credit check. We want to be able to check to make sure they're able to pay for what they're looking to purchase. So we can set up a credit check process. And when the deal is won, maybe we want to, for example, notify the sales manager that the deal has been won, and let's send a thank you email to the customer thanking them for their order. So you can see in here how you can populate, say for example, an email here. You can see all the message that you can add. You can choose the subject. So everything is populated inside each action block. So you simply go into here and you can populate the action. And so we're constantly checking here when there's changes to the deal, what stage the deal is at, and then based on that, we've got these different actions that we can run inside the system using the Business Process Editor tool. Okay, so that's a look there at the Business Process Editor tool. So you can easily create your very own processes using this tool, using drag and drop technology. And the other way you can run automations inside the deal, so this is one way, for example, if we go into the deal, we can actually also run automations using the deal automation rules. So inside the deal here, you have your pipelines for segmenting your deals. And in each pipeline here, you progress a deal through different stages to try and close that deal. Now, those stages that you go through are completely customizable. So you can have as many or as few stages on here as you require. You can change the name and the colors to customize those stages. And at each stage in that process, we can then set up automation rules and triggers. So for example, as soon as we're at the confirm requirement stage, we're sending out a templated email to this customer. You can also customize exactly when this particular action is automated. So it could be as soon as the deal hits that stage, or you might say, actually, let's say in 3 days, we want this action to then start running when it's hit the confirm requirement stage. We've got some tasks we're going to set up for the responsible person. Another quite useful automation is actually changing who is responsible. So it could have a certain stage where you actually want to be able to move this on to a different department, for example. So that's a really useful feature. And you can also use triggers. So a trigger will actually automatically update the stage of the deal. So for example, if you send out an email in one step and there's a link on that email, if they then click on that link on the email, we could then automatically update that deal to a specific stage in the process. So for example, if they click that link, it could be the quote is with the client. So we can use triggers to automatically update the stage of the deal. Okay, so we just had a question come through. Is Bitrix supplied with any pre-built business processes? So yes, it is. It does come with a standard general request process, a lead process, an expense process. So there are different processes that already come as standard with the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so now let's actually have a look at how we can trigger business processes. So trigger your business processes on the different editions of Bitrix24. First of all, you can create or update inside, for example, a deal. So when you create a deal, that could trigger a brand new business process in the system. You can manually trigger a process like we saw when we went into the Techco company. You could manually trigger a process, or within the feed section where we looked and opened up the leave approval form. You can manually trigger those processes. You could also use external triggers, so webhooks, which could then either, or using the API, you could then request an action to be initiated in the system. And if you've got fairly complex external trigger automation rules, we could look to use the self-hosted edition. So for example, with the self-hosted system, we can set up mailbox rules. So if an email is submitted to a particular email address, that could automatically open up a help desk ticket in the help desk module as an example. So the self-hosted system has the ability to create more dynamic and complex business processes in the platform. And we can just have a look at the rules, for example. So with the self-hosted system, you have access to what we call the control panel. And this is where you can start to really customize your Bitrix24 system. And if we go into our services area and into our mail, you can see here where we can set up our mailboxes. We can create rules in the system. So that's where we can now start to really create our very unique processes on any mailboxes in the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so now let's have a look at some live examples of actually running a business process in the system. So let's take a look now at those examples. So first of all, let's have a look at how we can create a new project in the system. So this is quite a useful way if you want to bring a group of people together in a very structured manner when you are managing projects. You could create a business process that can bring everyone together. It could automatically create the set of tasks that you need to complete, and that can all be done using the process tool. So let's go into our home feed area. And we can run this with running this from our feed section here. But you could also run this, for example, from the CRM in a contact or company, for example. So if we go to the workflow, we've got this new project workflow here. And you can see now this has opened up the new project form that we now need to complete. And you can see at the top, there are 3 mandatory fields that need to be inputted with information. So you can customize exactly what fields are made mandatory and also actually what fields are on display here. So you can see further down, we've got a file field, and we also need to choose what type of project this is. But this form is completely customizable to what information you would want to have inputted. So first of all, let's give this project a name. So let's call this Bitrix24 Process Webinar. We're going to select a manager for this particular project. So let's just select the owner, and we'll select a designer. So this is another participant in the particular project. We can choose a date for the project, and we could also add a description. We could add a file if we wanted to, and further down here we can select what type of project we want to initiate. And this is really important because we'll have a look at the process in the background shortly, but based on this selection, this is then going to create a specific group of tasks that need to be completed. So project A has certain types of tasks, project B has different types of tasks. So this is really useful because you can then set up your different configurations of projects that you could select from. So let's submit that form. And we can see now as the owner of this particular project, it has been submitted to me to now start working my way through to authorize the workflow. Okay, so I now need to give an estimated completion date for the project, and I'm going to approve that project. So we can see now we've got a notification and a task has been set up. So if we go into our workflow section, you can see that's created the Bitrix24 Processors Webinar project. And if we go into the About Project section, you can see it's just been created. It's brought through the different people who we want to be associated to the project. And if we go into tasks, we can see here it has created a task in the system. So we now need to start working on that task inside that project. So that's a really useful feature to streamline the creation of your projects in the system. And let's just have a look at this workflow actually in the background where we have the Business Process Designer tool. Okay, so this opens up all the different processes that we have in our Bitrix24 system. And we'll just go into the actual workflow designer so you can see how this was built. Okay, so you can see the new project process that is in our designer tool. So first of all, we needed to gather the information. So that's what was added into the form here. And then once that's been added, we've then created the work group and notified the members. So you saw how we had a notification. And then we also had to select what type of project we wanted to run. So we saw we selected project A and it created the scoping task. But if we'd selected project B, it would have created a completely different set of tasks in the system. So that's a really useful example here of how you can really configure processes and select different variables inside your process. Okay, the next process we're going to have a look at is what we call our leave approval process. So what we can do is go back into the feed section. And the leave approval process allows you to book annual leave directly inside your Bitrix24 system. So if we go into our workflow section again, we're going to select the leave approval form. And again, you can now see the form that has been opened up here. And again, the form is completely customizable, so you can decide what information would need to be entered for a leave approval to be initiated. So first of all, I'm going to select my start dates. Okay. So we'll just go back there and select a start date and an end date. Absence type, annual leave, and I'm going to put a reason. I'm going to submit that leave. And using the workflow we've triggered, it's now going to go to my manager to either approve or to reject that new request. So we can see now we're currently waiting for approval. And if we go to the manager's markup system, we can see that process here. It's now been added into my workflow. It's brought through all of the information about the request, so I can now either approve or deny that request. I'm going to approve it. Okay, so we can see now we've been notified. Fantastic, the holiday has been approved. And if we go into our time and reports section, this has an absence chart. So within here, you can see all of those approved leaves that are inputted across your organization. So the one we've just added there has been added into the system. One additional feature that we do have with the self-hosted edition is the ability to actually add an entitlement leave into the system. So as standard, you have that leave approval process, but there is no actual entitlement for each user. Whereas we have a custom plugin that we have created for the self-hosted edition, where you can add an annual leave entitlement for each user. And then as they start booking their annual leave, it will then start calculating how much leave entitlement that user has remaining. So what balance they have left in the system. And once a balance hits zero, then they won't be able to have any further leave approvals requested. You can also transfer over leave, any leave that's left over as entitlement. You could transfer that over to the next holiday year. So that's a custom process and plugin that we have developed here at Interface for the self-hosted edition of Bitrix24. Okay, and the third type of process we're going to look at here is actually how we can trigger the creation of a brand new lead in the system. And one way we can do this is, for example, it could be on your website. We could embed a website form. And when that user submits information on that form, it could automatically trigger the creation of a brand new lead in the system. So let's just go into our CRM area and let's go into our web form designer section so we can see how the forms are created. Okay, so you can see here you can create lots of different types of forms in the system. And we're going to go to a special lead form so we can see how the information is inputted. Okay, so this opens up the web form designer section. So within here, you can create your very own web forms. So you see here we've got a very simple sales inquiry form. We're going to get the name, the email address, and also the type of inquiry for this lead. And when you're creating these different forms, you can then embed these onto external sites. You can copy the code and embed these onto your websites. You may want to add them to landing pages. It's really simple to do. So all of the fields from your CRM system are integrated into here. So I can then select what fields I would like to display, for example. So maybe I want to know their position. I can customize exactly how that form looks. Okay, so let's now leave the form area. So we've got a form here. As I say, that could be embedded onto your website, for example. I've inputted some information. I'm going to add my type, inquiry type, and I'm going to submit that form. Okay, and you can see now that has automatically triggered the lead process creation. So if we go into our CRM system, we can now see that a brand new lead has been created automatically in our CRM based on the trigger of that web form being submitted. And if we open up the lead page, you can see inside here, it's brought through all of the information from the form. And it actually, we can blend in here different types of processes. So we've talked about the automation side of the CRM. Well, we can see here that works in action. So here we have automatically now sent out a thank you email to Sam, thanking him for submitting his inquiry. So from the web form being created, from it being triggered and creating a brand new lead in the CRM, we're then using the automation rules to automatically communicate with that potential lead in the system. So you can see how different types of processes can actually be combined together to streamline your processes. Okay, just a brief mention about the differences for the cloud and the self-hosted. Most of the tools are available in both the cloud and self-hosted editions. You will find if you're on a cloud system that you will need the professional cloud for most of the processes we have looked at today, but the self-hosted will have every single process we have looked at. Both include the editor tool, so where we can customize and design our own business processes. I would say really the main difference and the benefit of the self-hosted is you have the option to run processes on extra modules, such as on mailbox rules, and we can also use triggers. So maybe you want to trigger a process from the trigger of another system. So maybe your finance system or another platform that you want to integrate Bitrix with. We can use the Bitrix API to integrate with other systems on the self-hosted edition. So in summary, we've looked at how business processes can be run on documents, in the CRM, in projects, and in the HR feed and in lists. We can use very simple drag and drop workflow technology to actually create our own workflows. And business processes can be triggered either manually, automatically, or if on a self-hosted edition, it could be triggered by an email or an API call from another system. Okay, so here are a selection of future webinars we have coming up for you. We're here at 11 AM Eastern Time every Tuesday. I can see actually we've just had a few questions come in to the system. So can we set up a voicemail drop with Bitrix24? So what you can do using automation rules, if we go back into automation, you can set up a robocall. So based on the different stages, we've mentioned how you can automatically create actions. One of those features is a robocall. So inside here, you can set up a message. So you would type your message out here. You would then choose your language, the speed, the volume of that message, and that would then get relayed to the customer via a phone call. So when they answer the call, this message would then get relayed to them. And that can be automated at a specific stage and a specific time in your particular lead or deal process in the system. Okay, if there are any other questions in the meantime, please do email sales@intraface.com and we'll be happy to either answer those for you or set up a meeting to discuss your requirements in some more detail. I hope you found the Better Business Processes webinar useful today, and thank you for your time, and hopefully see you next week for the next webinar. Bye for now.